and welcome back to Korean Timber Talk. And so glad to have some of our previous panelists, Vash Mankad, Devendra, Mahesh, welcome back as well. And Yogesh will join us shortly. He's running a little late. But yeah, I think it's been a bit of a tragic week or weekend for world cricket. It's lost two of its great ambassadors of the game and two Australians, which is a coincidence, one after the other, literally on the same day. I mean, one day apart. So Rodney Marsh and the great Shane Warne. And I think it was our duty to basically talk about these two gentlemen and specifically the superstar, the magician, the artist in Shane Warne, who had, I'm sure I'm talking on behalf of the panel here, who has kind of defined our, formative years of watching cricket and, growing up and seeing that magic, through our childhood, through our, growing years and, how he kind of dominated the scene in world cricket. The record speaks for itself. There's no two ways about it. But he's much more than what the record could suggest. He was a complete superstar of world cricket, and I think cricket would be definitely poorer without him. And I think I'll probably start with Devendra, who has a lot of cherished memories, and he's also met the great man as well. So I think I'll start with you, Devendra, to maybe talk about some of his memories that you have in mind.
Yes, terrible news. We lost him too early. An absolute legend, as you said, a genius. It's our great fortune that we were around at the same time as him and we got to see him at his best. He made, he was easily the greatest leg spinner of all time. There is no doubt about that. But interestingly, he also made many people believe that they can bowl leg spin. So even as he went about showing us his genius, he also made leg spin bowling a little more user friendly. I think the primary difference between him and his predecessors was that leg spin. I remember the late 80s. It was like talked about in hushed tone that okay, leg spin. People believed that it was a difficult art, and it is a difficult art. It is cricket's most difficult and specialized art. There were only a few who really ventured into that territory. But Shane Warne, that entire package, all the tricks he possessed, then that zinc cream and then the attitude, that really appealed to youngsters. And he just made leg spin fashionable, user friendly. And what a great cricketer. Always did well in a crisis. There were so many instances in his career where he was believed to have been a spent force, and he just came back with a bang. And the mentoring that he did, going out of his way to talk to kids and conduct clinics impromptu. There are so many videos of him talking about the art of leg spin. A larger than life character. We're going to miss him very badly. The game is, as you said, the game is poorer without him.
Absolutely. And, one interesting aspect which you mentioned, Devendra, is that, generally when you come with, when you talk about spin bowlers, nowadays you have a lot of these mystery spinners, kind of things going on, right? Everybody's talking about mystery spinner. You don't know what's coming out of the hand. But I think what I loved about Warne was the simplicity. I think he did not bowl the googly that often. He had a really good, control leg spinner, which he could use and, have those subtle variations, without making the batsman notice that he's doing something different. That was the art of what Shane Warne brought to the table. That was the magician, the mystery that he brought to the table, right? I mean, he turned the ball big, no doubt about it, but he also knew how much to turn and how to kind of where to pitch the ball as well. That was the key to his success, I believe. Because a lot of these spinners bowl different kinds of variations, bowl maybe even 6 different deliveries in an over. But he was like, he focused on his art, the skill, which is a leg spin. And he knew
Richie Benoit once said that I told Shane Warne what Bill O'Reilly told me back in the early 50s.
Yeah.
That whatever you're doing, forget all that and focus on developing a fiercely spinning leg break. And Bill O'Reilly apparently told Richie Benoit that it will take you 4 years to master this delivery. But then Richie Benoit said Shane Warne mastered it in 2 years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Impressive.
And as we speak, we got a comment. Nishad is watching the 99 World Cup semi-final highlights along with this. What magic. Absolutely, Nishad, I think. And he also speaks about there's so many deliveries, but the one that dismissed Callis is one of the test standouts for the class of the batter dismissed and how he was dismissed. I mean, Can't agree more, Nishad. And I think we can't not talk about the 99 World Cup, right? I mean, I'm sure all of the panelists here agree in terms of it was his magic, right, Bash, which kind of turned
Absolutely.
the game around completely on its head. From 48 for no loss, chasing 213, which was a paltry score in a semi-finals. I mean, can't get bigger than this. So, there comes Shane Warne, the magician.
I completely agree. Even 96 and 99, you just can't, you keep wondering, the West Indies lineup of Chanderpaul, Lara, Richie Richardson, and
Yeah,
then the South African lineup, for him to, and it was not that, he picked up the tail, so to speak.
yeah,
He just destroyed the middle order,
correct.
in the pressure of a World Cup semi-final. And to be fair, even the final on a green
Yeah,
top in Lords, he
yeah.
just shut the
Ran through the
game.
Pakistan.
That's
Yeah,
the genius. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
unfortunately, he couldn't play the 2003 World Cup.
yeah.
But you never know what. Maybe I mean that's what the big match player. I mean, 96 and 99 both. I think
Yes.
he was just, and I think the hallmark of being a great batsman. I think what strikes me, what I think is in the 90s, the hallmark of being a great batsman, that is Lara and Sachin.
Sachin.
One of the benchmarks is how well they played Shane Warne. I mean, apart from all the other players, we consider
Correct.
them, top notch just because the manner in which they could play Shane Warne. There's no other batsman that comes to mind, who could play him as well as they did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yep. What's your favorite memory of him, Bhash, if I may ask?
Yeah, my favorite memory, of course, we've seen a lot of highlights and sitting on television, but my favorite personal memory, of course, is watching him live. This is the IPL final. I was a 22-year-old law intern doing my internship in Bombay. I stayed back for the final, went to DY Patil, and for the first time, although Dhoni was the toast of the nation after winning the 2007 World Cup, and all my friends were cheering for CSK. For some reason, Rajasthan was that underdog team, and I was actually cheering for Rajasthan to win. And the penultimate over, I believe, he had Yusuf Pathan was going great guns, and Yusuf Pathan got run out through Shane Warne's call. So
Yeah.
the scales are tilted in Chennai's favor. And then on the penultimate ball of I think the penultimate over, the last ball of the penalty, he creamed a cover drive, placed a cover drive, and then the win, the way managing the manner in which he mentored the youngsters, whether
Yeah.
it was Ravindra Jadeja, Swapnil Asnodkar, Munaf
Yeah.
Patel, who was also still, it was just fantastic. It's just an amazing story. So to watch that live, I think
Yeah.
that was a
Absolutely.
great.
And I think, yeah, glad you mentioned Swapnil Asnodkar as well. There's a lovely story about how Shane Warne actually went and visited his house in Goa, and how he
Yes.
made them feel so comfortable. And it's amazing, right? Although he's a superstar, but there's such a human element to him in terms of how he speaks to people, how he kind of treats other people as well. I think that's phenomenal to see as well as hear. And I'm glad that you brought that story out as well, Vash. And Mahesh, what's your favorite memory?
See, as far as Shane Warne is concerned, yeah, while we all talk about the ball of the century, I believe that he's bowled many ball of centuries. Okay? I mean, he
Yeah,
bowled so many of them that it's very unfair on calling what is the best. So somebody asked
yeah,
me once, how do you what is Shane Warne? I said every ball that he bowls is an event. He will
yeah,
he knows how to actually gather attention. He'll create something or the other. Even if the match is going nowhere, he
yeah,
had the ability to create something out of it.
yeah,
So, I mean, while there are a lot of occasions that has impressed me of Shane Warne, I think that one particular over that a lot of us can go back to YouTube and see, he bowling to Craig McMillan.
yeah,
Okay, this is in Christchurch, 2005-06, and there is a rough that is already created on the outside the leg stump, and Vaughan, of course, is bowling round the wicket. Vaughan bowling round the wicket with the rough is absolutely dangerous. According to me, he can run through any side. The first ball he bowls, and Macmillan just allows it to come and hit the pad. It's deliberate padding. Okay. Second ball, he uses the bat. The moment he uses the bat, just to create some psychological pressure, he says the guy standing at 45, he says come and field on the offside. I don't see any reason why he had to do it, but he just told him to do it. Now, is that to allow Macmillan to go for a sweep? I wouldn't know. Third ball is a full toss, and
yeah,
the ball comes and hits him on his foot. and you can see a little bit of giggle, Gilchrist, Ponting, and Hayden. They're all having a small giggle and looking at Vaughan. Vaughan is also having a giggle. Next ball, again a full toss. He allows it to come and hit the pad again. They all burst out laughing. I mean, full toss easily can be clipped for 2 or 4 or whatever it is. But the pressure in which Macmillan is, he doesn't want to play Vaughan. And they all burst out laughing. That's when the pressure starts coming in. And the next ball, which is pitched about 6 stumps outside the leg stump, there's no way to. There was no need for him to play. He actually plays with the bat pointing towards the square leg umpire, and he goes straight to the forward short leg fielder, and he's out caught. He is humiliated. He's embarrassed. He doesn't know where to say. He goes back to the pavilion shaking his head. Just goes to show that, I mean, there is no doubt that Shane Warne was a master as far as his ability was concerned, as far as his skill was concerned. But to me, the thing that was there between these 2 years was the reason why he was so successful. I mean, he knew what to do when, and that was important. Like, I think what Devendra said, he knew, I mean, how much to turn and whom to turn and from where to turn. So that is the reason why Shane Warne was so successful, and he picked up 708 wickets.
Absolutely. And like you said rightly, right? I mean, it's he first gets the batsman out in his mind and then he actually gets him out, right? Because like you said about changing the field, those are those subtle things that you do on the cricket field, right? Which creates doubt in the batsman's mind. And I think that's what exactly happened there as well. And he knows how to play around with the mind, right? He knows when to say what. And the best thing is, what I've read also in the last couple of days is tributes to Shane Warne. And, some of the times he works on the umpire as well, He'll kind of say something silently to the umpire while walking back to his mark. And, he'll just say, it's going down the leg side, right? He'll just try to make that kind of relationship with the umpire. And, he'll just say, watch out for the straighter one, watch out for the googly. And, he'll just try to play with their mind as well. So it shows that, how rounded he was and, how kind of he got everybody involved in his art, whatever he was doing. So, it's hats off to his craft. And, I mean, we could just go on and talk about his craft all day, right? But I think, the 99 semi-final is something which stands out in my memory in terms of, how he completely turned the game around. And I think everybody knows South Africa were really favorites in that particular game, the way they started off as well. And literally, there was a repetition of the ball of the century, if we may call, to Herschel Gibbs, the way the ball drifted, dipped, spun, bounced, and nobody could believe that can hit off stump from where it pitched. So he just recreated magic, and after that it was like South Africa kind of buckling down under pressure, and just gifting the game to Australia. Literally, we know what happened in the last over. So yeah, so I think Devendra, one more thing which we can speak about is the '98 series, and we've spoken about the greatness of Warne. But I think the human side of Warne also came out when he came to India in 1998. And I think that's where we saw an epic battle, which we'll kind of remember for throughout our lives, right? Sachin versus Warne. That entire series and also extending to Sharjah as well.
Yeah, so, it's very interesting that he is revered in India. And we are having this conversation, 4 Indians, despite the fact that our guys handled him better than anybody else. But that is because he made our guys pull out everything that they had. He made them perform to their best. And I think one of the greatest tributes that was ever paid to him was the fact that our foremost batsman of the time had to actually scuff up the spot on the practice pitches at where the fast bowlers, to replicate that rough outside the leg stump. And he got some of the best spinners in the country, people who had played test cricket for India, to actually bowl to him in the nets and land the ball on that rough, because he anticipated that Shane Warne would aim to do precisely that in the test series to follow, and he wanted to practice. He wanted to get used to that, practice the slog sweep. So that was a great tribute paid to Shane Warne by a fellow genius. Another thing I feel is another reason why Shane Warne is special to us Indians, and despite the fact that our guys played him a lot better than anybody else. And it's not just Sachin. You talk about Ravi Shastri, you talk about obviously VVS Lakshman, Rahul Dravid, Virender Sehwag, all those guys. Sidhu, of course, unsung hero as far as Shane Warne is concerned. Vinod Kambli in a tantalizing over at Sharjah. Manoj Prabhakar in a short spell in a quadrangular series in New Zealand in 1995. Sanjay Manjrekar in the 1996 World Cup game. So we played him better than most. But why do we still revere him? I think one of the reasons is that Shane Warne's rise coincided with satellite television in India. So
Correct.
he and Brian Lara were the first two non-Indian cricketers whom we actually saw evolving post
Absolutely.
93. The series between Pakistan and the West Indies, played in the West Indies in early 93, was the first that we saw live in India, the first
Correct.
non-India test series, thanks to Star. And couple of months after that came the 93 Ashes, and we all know what happened in the first test of that Ashes series. And then as the years passed, the hat trick in the Boxing Day test of 1994, we all watched that live, the victory in the West
Absolutely.
Indies in 95. So we watched Shane Warne, evolving, and we were aware of what he's capable of doing. Although our guys played him better than most players, but yeah, I mean that '98 series, Sachin's preparations, it was a clash of the two titans, and I don't think Shane Warne bowled badly, but he was
Yes.
just outsmarted by
Yeah.
another legend.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I think, and one more thing, Devendra, when you mentioned that we played him better than others, the biggest testimony is the way he started his career in Sydney, 1992, right? So
Yes, yes, yes,
150 runs for a wicket. Imagine that's your debut test match, and from there, coming back to become the champion that he was. Anybody would
yes.
have been demoralized the way he was treated by Ravi Shastri and Tendulkar in Sydney, right? So, I mean that shows his mental fortitude and strength, right? In terms of knowing, that he's really good and he can make a comeback, and I think
And
that
he
that
was very
experience,
lucky to
yeah,
have the right people around him.
correct,
Terry Jenner, of course, the guru. Alan
yeah,
Border, what a
Alan Border,
captain to have.
yeah,
So when they went to England for the Ashes in
yeah,
'93, Alan Border's instructions to him were only bowl leg breaks. If memory serves me right, they did not even play him in the ODI series before the Test series. They wanted to
yeah,
hide him, and then
correct,
Graham Hick took him apart in a 3-day game. But
yeah,
Alan Border said only leg breaks, only leg breaks.
absolutely,
Do not
absolutely,
reveal all your tricks. So it
yeah.
helps to have such people around you as well at the start of your
Yeah,
career.
yeah. I think leadership is important for sure. Yeah. So, a couple of interesting comments from Nishad again. His comeback in 2004 against Sri Lanka is memorable. Yes, just walked away with the test. Ask Andrew Soward about how much it counts. Absolutely. Yeah. I think we had Yogi there briefly. Yogi, are you still there? Not sure.
I am indeed.
All
I
right.
am indeed.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Welcome, Yogi. So,
I
we
just want
spoke
to fix
about
some bandwidth issues, so sorry about that.
all right. We spoke about a lot of things. We spoke about the 99 semis. We spoke about the 2008 IPL where Vash was a witness to his greatness. We spoke about Mahesh, spoke about his over to Craig McMillan where he, created doubt in his mind by bowling outside the leg stump. So what's your favorite memory, Yogi, of the great Shane Warne?
Are we just speaking about one?
Good question. We are
I think
not, but then we are just talking about what is your thing, which is kind of which it instantly hits you
yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of
yeah.
when you talk about Shane Warne.
I I'll talk about two. I'll talk about two. And so
Mm-hmm.
one is when he struggled and one is when he did really well, let's say, right? And both
Mm-hmm.
against his arch nemesis and a very good friend Sachin Tendulkar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember once he was bowling and he got so frustrated, at bowling at Sachin, that he actually bowled a bouncer to
Yes,
Sachin, and Sachin obviously
Yeah.
yes,
casually, just you know Shane Warne wasn't
Uh,
aloof to trying something new, to try and
yeah.
one either get under the skin of the batsman or to get them out in probably other ways or things like that. Second is, so obviously we all know that Sachin had better and upper hand against Shane Warne for a long time, but it wasn't always like that. Let's say towards the end of Sachin's career and when both of them were playing IPL, right? By that time, I felt Shane Warne had started getting measure of Sachin Tendulkar, the batsman, and Sachin obviously wasn't. At his that sublime best during that time, and he was
Yeah.
he was more economical batsman who knew as to where his strengths and limitations were. Around that
Yeah.
time I saw that Shane Warne could actually ping Sachin Tendulkar on his pads, and it was one such game. I don't remember the details now, but Sachin was almost winning that single handedly for Mumbai Indians, as he usually did. And
Yeah.
then this man comes in change, pings Sachin on the pads, gets the crucial LBW, and then he changes the course of the match to win it for his team. And
Yep.
during that match, I heard something that Harsha Bhogle said and has stayed with me forever. He said, "This man's ability to impose his will on the outcome of the game is unparalleled," and that to me
Absolutely.
summed Shane Warne in that sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, can't agree more. We spoke about the same thing. Mahesh spoke about that, and and even Devendra spoke about all these things. And in terms of how he could turn the game around, just single-handedly by his thought process itself. Not just his skill only, but also the way he thinks, the way he kind of outsmarts the batsman. For sure, he's a game changer in the true sense. Absolutely. And Bhash, I think we also have to speak about the famous Basit Ali dismissal when he did
Oh
him
yes.
between the legs. I think we can't not talk about that because that's one video which is played time and again on YouTube, on social media channels, and I think we definitely have to speak about that, right?
Yeah, it's such a great story. The fact that Ian Healy spoke about it, and Shane Warne, they I think made him wait for a good about 10 minutes, and they were not talking about cricket at all, and they were not
Yeah,
talking about the plan to get him out at all. And to actually on the last, I'm sure leg spin is an art where your hands are tired at the end of the day. That is
yeah,
magic, right? On the last ball of the day to sort of pitch it in the right area and get that drift and turn to humiliate the batsman. I mean, that's just sheer genius. I mean, it's a I mean, it's slightly reminiscent of the Moin Khan dismissal with Sachin
yeah,
actually, in
yeah. In
Pakistan.
Multan, yeah,
Slightly
yeah,
reminiscent before you sort of thought about it, but yeah, I mean, it was just pure genius. And
yeah,
I'd like to say what one thing which struck me, of course, having seen the stats, I was too young in the 80s.
yeah,
England and Australia till the late 80s. With the Ashes series, they were even Stevens. Almost, England were doing. In fact, till Mike Gatting in '86, in England had the wood over Australia. I think
Hmm.
post '93, after Shane Warne came into his own,
Yes,
England just didn't stand any chance. Of course, still the famous 2005 series, but if you consider India-Pakistan rivalry, unfortunately, we haven't played so many tests. But
yeah,
what Shane Warne did in Ashes, which is of course top
yeah,
billing, it's just phenomenal. Whether it was in England or in Australia, his performances in Test cricket in the Ashes, I think he's the
yes,
highest number of wickets also. So that is what
absolutely.
meant that he was just genius. I mean, of course, he had a support of McGrath and Lee and Gillespie, but all of them came later. But the
Yeah.
manner in which he single-handedly,
Yep. I think even in the 2005 Ashes, Bash, he
oh,
got
he was
probably 40
brilliant.
odd wickets, even though
14
Australia
wickets.
lost it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? 40 wickets in
Had
a,
he
yeah, in a five test
had
match
he
series.
caught Kevin Peterson that day, I think the result also could have been different.
Yeah, I know, it
Right.
dropped him, right? Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I mean, the impact that he had on the Ashes was phenomenal. And I think that's where you're right. In the 90s, when Australia really started dominating England, Shane Warne was actually, Warne and McGrath, you could say so, was actually the core of,
Yeah.
what started that domination. And I think definitely that's like, yeah, that's the story to talk about. And Mahesh, I think another interesting battle that he had with Daryl Cullinan from South Africa, I think that is something which is, which is
I
hilarious
think
as
that
well as
we've spoken in
fascinating.
one of the earlier episodes also about it. But before that, let me tell you. Once somebody asked Vaughan what was his preparation before a test match, the morning of a test match,
Yeah.
and Vaughan, being Vaughan, said that he doesn't run around or does anything like that. He said, "I bowl anything between 10 to 25 balls in the net. Maybe the 11th ball, the moment I realize that the ball is coming out well out of my fingers, out of my hand, I stop.
Yeah.
That means I'm prepared for the day. I go to the dressing room, pick a cup of coffee, light a cigarette, and plan the dismissals. So that is how he used to get ready to play a match. Knowing Vaughan, he would have done exactly that, right? Because Vaughan he's different. Coming back to Cullen, poor guy, I mean, he just did not know. He never got the measure of Vaughan. I
Yeah.
mean, he took a break, he came back, and Vaughan always had something to say. But the moment he realized that he had the upper hand, he would not keep quiet. He would get after the guy. And
Yeah.
Kalaman gave it to him in a platform. He told him, come and do whatever you want. I mean, he just was mentally, he was like, in Steve Walk's term, mentally disintegrated kind of a thing as far as Warne was concerned. So to me, that was actually not even a battle. I mean, it was too one-sided. I mean,
There was
battle
one
is
clear
something
winner.
he had with Tendulkar. Battle
Yeah.
is something he had with Lara. Those were battles where, like what
Yeah.
Devendra said, the ability to get the best out of your opponent also speaks
Yes.
a lot about Warne. I mean, because they would never have raised their game. I mean, Tendulkar would never have raised the game the way he did it in Chennai when he scored 155 if it was
Yeah.
any other bowlers, because he would not
Yeah.
have taken the trouble of going and scuffing up the pitch outside the leg stump or anything of that sort.
Yes.
But
Yes.
because it was Warne, and Ravi Shastri did tell him before that match that when the match is in the balance, remember Warne will come round the wicket. Because till
Yeah.
then he won't come round the wicket. When the match is in the balance, expect Warne to come round the wicket. And he gave him
Yeah.
another very good piece of advice. He told him, if it was me, because I'm much taller than you, I can
Yeah.
reach and I can
Yeah.
defend the ball. You being much vertically challenged, you don't have that option. Your option has to be aggressive. So go
Correct.
back and whack him. And that's exactly the moment he came bowled, bang, it went outside the ground. Couple of times
Yeah.
that Warne did not expect that kind of a counter attack. So it was very
Exactly.
planned, like what Devendra said. Even Tendulkar had great people around him, just like Warne had great people around him. That's when a player actually flourishes, because he needs great advice. Tendulkar was already about 8-9 years into international cricket. He was by that time the world's best batsman, but still he needed a little bit of advice coming in from somebody who had played cricket for a long time and who had seen cricket for a long time. So these are two things which stick into my mind. The one that how he prepared before a test match with coffee and cigarette, and after bowling 10 balls in the net. And the second one was the way Tendulkar prepared of how to handle Warne. These are two very good stories, which I love talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, speaking of Cullen, and I think probably that's the first instant when I was kind of learning cricket at that stage, in the early 90s when we were all growing up. And that's the first time I actually saw somebody bowl a flipper. And we were so fascinated by that delivery, and I'm sure everybody would have tried to bowl that kind of a ball when they were just playing in their backyard or, playing competitive cricket somewhere, right? It's such a fascinating thing to watch, right? The way it kind of just shoots off after pitching. And I think...
Just let me ask all of us out here. Haven't
Yeah.
each one of us at some point of time tried to imitate Warne by bowling that action?
Absolutely.
Walking
Of
up
course.
and trying to bowl. Everybody has done it.
I used to bowl left arm quick. I shifted to left arm wrist spin. There was only one reason.
Absolutely.
Everybody would have done it.
Yeah.
And everybody felt he had some Shane Warne in him.
Yes.
So the ball would
That's
not
what I
reach the other end. That's a different thing. But he
made
would
it
always
user
have done it.
friendly.
He made it user friendly. That's the right word.
Absolutely. Yep. Yogi, anything else that
Mahesh,
you want to share?
I've seen a couple of my friends try to imitate that action, but they were so slow that you could reach them before the bounce and actually hit them, and so you knew how hard it was to get that pitch drift and drop and turn and all of that. So I found it was easier to imitate Glenn McGrath than Shane Warne because just down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I want to ask Devendra one thing, since he has met Warne. I've heard that Warne had very thick fingers. Is that true?
Yes, he did.
That was the
And
reason
an
why he was able to.
absolute professional. So I interacted with him a bit when I was working at Star. A thorough professional, would do whatever was asked of him to do. Would keep all his commitments, and a brilliant commentator. We all have seen that Brendan McCullum video several times.
Oh, yes.
Incisive, sharp. He would often predict not just the McCullum dismissal, but even when he was actually in the box. There were several times when he predicted what is going to happen. An absolute legend. I mean, we lost him too early.
Yeah. And I think one really interesting statement that I saw in his upcoming documentary, on Shane Warne was, there's always a human price to pay in the pursuit of greatness, and that's
Correct.
kind of stuck with me in my head.
Completely,
And it's so true, right? And obviously we all know the life that he had outside of cricket. His personal life wasn't the greatest in terms of his married life and all those other controversies that we had. that he had. But then again, the way he also speaks about some of them in the documentary, I haven't seen it fully, but the snippets that I saw tells you that he is human, right? He has made mistakes, and he
I think
always.
his
Yeah,
autobiography, No Spin, is a classic. And every cricket
yeah,
lover should read that book. He has not sat on the fence, and
yeah,
that is a big thing. There's an absolutely delightful chapter on the art of leg spin bowling, and I have read it multiple times. And there
yeah.
are also digs at all the people we did not get along with, Steve or John Buchanan. It makes for quite
Oh, he
hilarious reading.
hated Buchanan.
And actually, that's the beauty of it, right? Devendra, he minces no words in terms of expressing
Absolutely, absolutely.
what he feels.
Even his last interview, right? I was just reading. He mentioned the New South Wales mafia behind Langer's exit, right? The fact
Yeah.
that he could say that so openly, right? He
Yes.
did mention that, of course, he stated that, this player power, the manner in
Yeah.
which Justin Langer was treated. He made no
Correct.
bones about it. So there was always a ring of truth to it. Whether you agree or not is probably secondary, but
Yeah.
the fact that he, you know,
Yep.
mentioned the manner in which Langer was treated. And also Ian Chappell, I was just watching a video in Crick Info. Apparently, he had a heart of gold. There's this story where after a day after the test match, they all wanted to go out for a meal, and that's when the whole crowd was wanted a autograph and a picture with Shane Warne. So what Shane Warne did is he made them stand in a line. Not only did he give an autograph to the young kids, but he interacted with each of them one on one. That
Yes.
shows the generosity of the man. It's
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't think too many icons, including our Indian players, have that kind of time
Yeah.
or the manner in which to make the other person feel special. That was a
Yes.
fantastic one.
Yes. And I think one more thing is Yogi, the way he was such a brand ambassador for Test cricket, right? Not just when he played, but also if you see in the last few years when Virat Kohli played, right? The way he complimented the Indian team and Kohli for kind of taking Test cricket to new heights, and even against Australia when we won, generally if you see most commentators will
Yes.
have a bias and they just talk about their own team. But the way he spoke about Team India, Kohli, and the way he congratulated them and spoke about them on the world stage, that shows what Vash is talking about, the generosity of the man and the non-biasness of the man, right, as a commentator as well.
Absolute legend in that sense, absolute legend. Look, I think his success in Ashes is what actually revitalized the Ashes as well. He
Yep.
actually made it box office theater, and so we all knew that that was probably his most loved format as well. Obviously, he got wickets by truckloads in one-day matches as well, but we know he was at his best in Test matches. He was best in Test matches in a Test match team that was probably the strongest after the team of West Indies, right? And
Yes.
so I think earlier also we've spoken that he got to bowl alongside likes of Gillespie and McGraw and all of that. But you would almost say that he was anomaly in that Australian lineup, right? I mean, you had these phenomenal fast bowlers, and here was a who was daring to say, you know what, I'm not here to play a support role. I am the showman of this team, and he actually made that and showed everyone that, isn't it? For a
Yeah.
moment, you almost felt like somebody like McGrath wasn't the ace bowler of his team, and
Yeah.
how phenomenal is that? And so we knew the impact he had on the Test match side, and a lot of people
Yeah.
I know like to talk about this, saying he was the best captain Australia never had, and I probably
Yes.
feel why he wasn't the captain, because he
Hmm.
lived life the way he loved to, and that was
Yeah.
probably too much fun for somebody to be given the responsibility of a captain. So, but that, I think we all know the impact he had on Test matches and loved the format, and he, I think did his best while commentating and all of that to
Yeah.
recognize the moments that were applause worthy, and he made um, no shortcuts in giving that praise away. So he was never reserved in that sense. So he was a delight to hear. Occasionally also annoying when he said somebody deserves a hawk pile and all of that, but that was other side of Shane Warne also.
Yeah, that's what, right? He doesn't mince words in terms of speaking his heart out. So yeah, but again, he's a complete package. It all comes together. Before signing off, Devendra, just a couple of words for Rodney Marsh. I'm sure you would have had some memories around him as well. Like we spoke about in the beginning of the show. Unfortunately, we saw the demise of two Australian greats, and Rodney Marsh was also there along with Shane Warne. And so condolences to their families, and we would love to speak a little more about Rodney Marsh as well, Devendra.
It's an extraordinary coincidence. Before Shane Warne came along, Rodney Marsh was considered to be the best captain Australia never had. And to
Wow.
lose both of them within a few hours of each other. Great wicketkeeper batsman, typified that macho, aggressive Aussie of the 70s, uh, perceived as an anti-establishment person, unfortunately, which is why he lost out on the big job.
Yeah.
Somehow, Greg Chappell, although he also had shifted to Kerry Packer, but they were okay with Greg Chappell becoming captain, but they were not okay with Rodney Marsh taking over. But yeah, that doesn't take anything away. I think more than his wicket keeping, I mean, he held the world record obviously for wicket keeping for several years. But more than that, what he went on to do as a mentor, as a selector in not
Yeah.
just Australia but England as well. An
Yeah.
entire generation of cricketers, including Shane Warne, they
Yes.
they, they spent their formative years under him. So
Correct.
his contribution to the game is massive. Something that unfortunately we Indians don't remember is the role that he played when the NCA was founded in Bangalore.
Yes.
Correct.
He was
Absolutely.
Yes.
associated with
Yes.
the NCA for 2 years. It was great that the players, the BCCI acknowledged it at the start
Yes.
of the test match as well. So yeah, I mean, an all-rounder in the true sense of the term, wicket-keeper, batsman, and then a coach, mentor, selector. And
Yes.
before we sign off, there's one more thing which I would like to say with regard to Shane Warne.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone feels that they are involved. Like all the people who got to work with him, interact with him, they would now be having these memories of him. And a very special memory for me is the fact that when he played his last IPL match in
Mm-hmm.
2011. It was a game against Mumbai Indians at Wankhede Stadium, and I was the one who conducted the post-match press conference. His last post-match press conference as an IPL player, and usually these post-match press conferences which are held for 8 p.m. matches. They
Yeah.
generally start around midnight, so
Yeah.
people are generally tired. The players are tired. The journalists are tired. Everybody wants to go home, and they don't go on for more than 4 to 5 minutes at the most. But what I
Yeah.
remember about that press conference is that it went on for nearly 15 minutes, and every line that he was speaking was a headline. So he spoke about his love for poker. He spoke about how Lalit Modi was a visionary. Not a very safe thing to say in the year 2011, but he said that. So he spoke. He spoke about Elizabeth Hurley. And the
Yeah.
journalists were all like, they were like, they had these broad
They
grins.
had a field day.
Something else also happened, which not related to him, but related to a certain journalist. We'll not get into that, obviously. But I
Yeah.
will always cherish that memory that his last press conference as an IPL player was moderated by me.
Yeah. So he owned the stage there as well, right? Off the
Of
field,
course,
on the
you bet,
field, he is
you
like
bet.
the superstar.
Superstar.
Warne owns wherever he goes.
Box office stuff. Yeah.
He must be owning it
Absolutely.
up there also.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There was this joke. I just saw this today morning. Kerry O'Keefe spoke about, yes, he'll definitely go to heaven, but I think he might be on a probationary period there just to start off and see how he behaves, and then they let him in. So that sums up the man, right? Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot
He
for
might
all your
start having
comments.
more fun in the heaven. Who knows?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for joining in. And I think, like Yogesh said, it's never enough. Whatever you speak about the great man, you can just keep talking on and on and on about him. There's so many memories attached to the way he has, played the sport, as well as the way he has carried himself on and off the field. And like Devendra rightly said, right, it's a testimony that to an Australian cricketer, that five Indians sitting on this program are talking
Correct.
about him with such vigor, with such passion, and with such generosity in terms of what he has done right on the cricket field. And I think that sums up the entire contribution to what he's done for the sport on a
I
whole.
don't think
So
any other international player would have got this kind of mileage or this kind of conversation anywhere in the
absolutely.
world.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the reaction says it all, right? On social media, it was disbelief. Everybody was like, including Nishad, who's not there today here. So it's like everybody wanted to literally have it as a rumor and not the truth, right? It's like it was so sad,
Yes, right.
and yeah. Yeah, I think I could not just believe when I saw it on my phone when people started messaging us, right? So it's crazy. So yeah, so
Venu,
condolences to the Warne family. Yeah, yeah, Yogi.
Venu, just one last thing I'd like to say, and with
Hmm.
all legends, really, right? It's what's their legacy really about? It's much more than what they've achieved on the field, but it is a lot
Mm.
more about what they've left behind.
Yep.
And Shane Warne hasn't just left behind his great performances for us to cherish or the ball of the century to look back on, but he's left behind people like Ravindra Jadeja who
Oh
are now
yes.
delighting fans, because let's not forget that these were the youngsters playing in a nondescript kind of IPL team who got
Mm.
the belief that they could belong at the big stage and make their presence
Correct.
count, and how some of these
Yes.
have actually blossomed. And I feel the contribution of Shane Warne is actually that he gave people the belief that they could own the stage and be bigger than what
Correct.
they would have probably thought of themselves. And for me, that legacy is what will live on. That
Yep.
you can trust in your talent, believe in yourself, and then live your life in the way you would want to. Who's there to judge anyway?
Absolutely. I completely agree. And wasn't it
Very well said.
befitting that Jadeja did what he did on this weekend, right? Right when we got this news, and when we were paying tributes to Warne, and I think the rock star Ravindra Jadeja, as he used to call him, he has kind of given him the biggest tribute by performing the way he did in the last couple of days in this Test match. So yeah, kudos to that that mentorship that he did in Rajasthan Royals, and I think the entire franchise would be indebted to kind of Shane Warne for building that franchise the way he did. And I think that's where the Moneyball theory started for Rajasthan Royals, in terms of picking the right talent and grooming them to perform, and not just picking superstars around, right? So I think that's the biggest contribution that he did for that franchise.
So India
All
defeated
right.
Sri Lanka in a test match, and we are not even talking about it.
Can you believe that there is a test match which ended and we haven't spoken a single word about that?
Single word on it.
And that summarizes the program today. The impact that Shane Warne had on our in our minds, and in our cricketing journeys, right? So that's the summary for you. Can't be better than this, right, Mahesh? We haven't spoken a single word about the test match. All right, guys. Thank you very much. You have a great Sunday, and let's catch up soon with another
Our Sunday
program.
is almost over, you know.
Mine is starting.
Enjoy.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Chalo,
Bye
bye
bye.
bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.